Hello students, welcome to this session. I would teach Indigo, the chapter 5 in your Flamingo book. Indigo by Louis Fischer. The source book is The Life of Mahatma Gandhi. That is, this chapter Indigo is an excerpt from the book The Life of Mahatma Gandhi. Now we come to know about the journey of Mahatma Gandhi, who was a lawyer, a politician and a spiritual leader. And he is the father of the nation. Now the backdrop of the story is that it has a historical background. That is, this chapter describes the national movement, a very important national movement, which is in an extract from the book The Life of Mahatma Gandhi, and this book has been featured in the award-winning film Gandhi, which was released in 1982. The story revolves around the Indigo movement, and also this is also known as Champaran Satyagraha in history, and this was to safeguard the sharecroppers from the atrocities of landlords. Now we have to know about the author. Now Louis Fischer, 1896 to 1970, was born in Philadelphia in 1896. He served as a volunteer in the British Army between 1918 and 1920. Fischer made a career as a journalist and wrote for the New York Times, the Saturday Review, and for European and Asian publications. He was also a member of the faculty of Princeton University. Now students, please read the introductory part of the chapter which is about the author in each chapter of your Flamingo book. Might be in the CBSE board exam you'll be given questions from this part also. Now we start the chapter Indigo, which is on page number 46 in your Flamingo book. When I first visited Gandhi in 1942 at his ashram in Sevagram. Now who is this Louis Fischer? He relates an interview which he had taken with Gandhi in 1942 at his ashram in Sevagram, which is in central India. He said, that is Gandhiji said, I will tell you how it happened that I decided to urge the departure of the British. It was in 1917. So Gandhiji told Louis Fischer that he would tell that how he decided to urge means to wish, he desired the departure of the British, and that year was 1917. He had gone to the December 1916 annual convention of the Indian National Congress Party in Lucknow. There were 2,301 delegates and many visitors. Now he means Gandhiji had gone to the December 1916 annual convention. That is, annual means yearly, convention is meeting or agreement of the Indian National Congress Party in Lucknow. And there were how many delegates? There were how many delegates means representatives. There were how many delegates? There were 2,301 delegates and many visitors were there. Now during the proceedings, Gandhi recounted. So Gandhiji recounted means he told or he related that a peasant came up to me looking like any other peasant in India, poor and emaciated. Peasant is a farmer, a small farmer. He's called he is a peasant. So Gandhiji relates that a peasant came up to him, who looked like any other peasant in India, poor and emaciated. That how was the condition? He was a poor peasant, and he was emaciated, means looked very thin and weak, and said, so the peasant said, I am Rajkumar Shukla. I am from Champaran. I want you to come to my district. Now the peasant approached Gandhiji, and what was his name? His name was Rajkumar Shukla, and he had gone to the Lucknow National Congress Convention Party from Champaran, and he wanted Gandhiji to visit his district. Now, students, this is the stamp on Rajkumar Shukla, which was issued in 2018. Gandhiji had never heard of the place. Now, which place? Champaran. He had never heard of the place. It was in the foothills of the towering Himalayas near the kingdom of Nepal. So, where was Champaran? Here you see, this is the Champaran, and it was in the foothills. This was the foothills of Nepal. This is the Nepal part. So the Champaran, which is in Bihar, is in the foothills of Nepal. Under an ancient arrangement. So under an ancient means under a very old arrangement, the Champaran peasants were sharecroppers. Now Champaran grew a very costly item, that is, there was the indigo cultivation. Now students, indigo, I hope you know, in Hindi we call neel. It is a dye which is taken from the indigo flower, which is made from the indigo flowers, blue color. So there was an ancient arrangement. The Champaran peasants were what? Sharecroppers. Who are sharecroppers? The sharecroppers is a tenant farmer. That is, a tenant farmer means a farmer who takes a land on rent. Now these sharecroppers, these tenant farmers, had to give a part of the production or the cultivation of the crops as a rent to the landlords. So this was an ancient arrangement made in Champaran to the peasants of Champaran. Rajkumar Shukla was one of them. So Rajkumar Shukla was also a sharecropper in Champaran. He was illiterate. That is, he did not know how to read and write, but he was resolute. That is, he was resolute means he was illiterate. Now here you see, Rajkumar Shukla was illiterate, but he was resolute, means he was determined. He had come to the Congress session to complain about the injustice of the landlord system in Bihar. So why had he gone to the Congress session in Lucknow? To complain about the injustice of the landlord system in Bihar. So students, be very careful in reading all the parts in the chapter carefully, so that you can answer the long answers in this term 2 of your CBSE board. So why had he gone to Gandhiji? He had gone to Gandhiji to complain about the injustice of the landlord system in Bihar, and somebody had probably said, speak to Gandhi. So Rajkumar Shukla says that he had been told by somebody to speak to Gandhi. So Gandhiji at that time, was a freedom fighter, he was a politician, he was a great leader. So he thought that Gandhiji would be able to resolve the problem. So now students, let me tell you that this Champaran movement in 1917 was the first movement of civil disobedience, and this was headed by Mahatma Gandhi, and it was a very successful movement. That is how the Indians showed disobedience in the commands and demands of the government then. Who was the government? The British rulers. India was a colony at that time of the Britishers. Britishers ruled over India. So, Gandhiji Rajkumar Shukla was told that to speak to Gandhi. Gandhi told Shukla he had an appointment in Cawnpore. Now, this Cawnpore is the Kanpur of the modern times. In the British India, this word was pronounced, Kanpur was pronounced as Cawnpore, and was also committed to go to other parts of India. So he was committed to go to the other parts of India. Let me write. This is Kanpur. So, go to other parts of India. Shukla accompanied him everywhere. So, what did Shukla do? Shukla was so resolute, was so determined to get over with the problem of the sharecroppers in his district Champaran that he went on with Gandhiji everywhere, went on accompanying with Gandhiji everywhere. Wherever Gandhiji went, he too went with Gandhiji. Then Gandhi returned to his ashram near Ahmedabad. So Gandhiji, after he had an appointment in Kanpur, and then he went to back to Ahmedabad. Shukla followed him to the ashram. Now this is the ashram in Ahmedabad. The picture shows the ashram in Ahmedabad. Shukla followed him to the ashram. Few weeks he never left Gandhi's side. Fix a date, he begged. That is, who begged? Rajkumar Shukla begged, entreated Gandhiji to fix a date to go to Champaran. Impressed by the sharecroppers' tenacity and story, Gandhiji said, I have to be in Calcutta on such and such a date. So, Gandhiji was very impressed by the sharecroppers, that is Rajkumar Shukla's tenacity, means persistence, determination, and story. Gandhi said that he had to be on Calcutta on the dates, the different dates. Come and meet me and take me from there. So Gandhiji approved that Shukla, that he can come to Calcutta, then it was known as Calcutta, and take him from there to Champaran. Months passed. Shukla was sitting on his haunches at the appointed spot in Calcutta. So this is how a person sits on haunches, that is on the thighs. This is the way is sitting on haunches. Months passed, and he sat on his haunches because he was a poor peasant, and he sat there in Calcutta when Gandhi arrived. He waited till Gandhi was free. Then the two of them boarded a train for the city of Patna in Bihar. There Shukla led him to the house of a lawyer named Rajendra Prasad, who later became the president of the Congress party and of India also. So Rajkumar Shukla took Gandhiji to the house of a lawyer, Rajendra Prasad, who became the president of India, and he was the president of Congress party, and later he became the president of India. Rajendra Prasad was out of town, but the servants knew Shukla as a poor yeoman, a man who cultivates a small piece of land, who pestered their master to help the indigo sharecroppers. Now Rajendra Prasad was out of town, but the servants knew Shukla as a poor yeoman. That is, a poor yeoman means a poor peasant, who pestered, that is, who harassed, who insisted to their master, that is to Rajendra Prasad, to help the indigo sharecroppers, because at that time it was a very, very prevalent problem in Champaran. So they let him stay on the ground with his companion, Gandhi and whom they took to be another peasant. So what did the workers do there? They let him stay on the ground with his companion Gandhi, whom they took to be another peasant, because Gandhiji was also a very simple dressed man. But Gandhi was not permitted to draw water and from the well lest some drops from his bucket pollute the entire source. So at that time, India was having the problem of untouchability. Later on in the constitution, students, this you must know, untouchability has been made a punishable offense. I think in Article 17 it is mentioned. But Gandhiji was not permitted to draw water from the well, lest some drops from his bucket pollute the entire source. How did they know that he was not an untouchable? So the people at Rajendra Prasad's house did not know that Gandhiji was not an untouchable and he should not be taken like that. Gandhi decided to go first to Muzaffarpur, which was en route, that is on the way to Champaran, to obtain a more complete information about conditions than Shukla was capable of imparting. So what did Gandhiji do? He first wanted to go to Muzaffarpur, then to Champaran to obtain a more complete information about conditions from Shukla. Then he wanted to see a first-hand view. He wanted to see that actually what is the condition. He accordingly sent a telegram to Professor J.B. Kirpalani of the Arts College in Muzaffarpur, whom he had seen at Tagore's Shanti Niketan school. So accordingly he sent a telegram. In those days, the telegram was not like the telegram which is on the social media these days. Telegram used to be like a postal postal message which used to go very fast. So he went to J.B. Kripalani of the Arts College in Muzaffarpur, whom he had met at in West Bengal, that is in Shanti Niketan School of Tagore, means Ravindranath Tagore, and Shanti Niketan School is very quite near to Kolkata. Now this flower is actually, I have given you this picture, is the indigo flower from which the dye was made. The train arrived at midnight 15th April 1917. Kripalani was waiting at the station with a large body of students. So Kripalani was waiting at the station at Muzaffarpur with a large body of students. Gandhi stayed there for 2 days in the home of Professor Malkani, a teacher in government school. It was an extraordinary thing in those days, and Gandhi commented, for a government professor to harbour a man like me. That is, to harbour means to host or to keep a man like a national figure like Gandhiji, who was a freedom fighter, because they were all working under the government, that is under the British government which was existing at that time in India. In smaller localities, the Indians were afraid to show sympathy for advocates of home rule. So in smaller localities, mean in small places, the Indians were also afraid to show any kind of sympathy, any kind of friendship, any kind of sympathy for the advocates, means for the people who fought for home rule. Home rule means to have India's own rule on its own country, India. The news of Gandhi's advent means coming, and of the nature of his mission spread quickly through Muzaffarpur and to Champaran, that Gandhi has come to Champaran. Sharecroppers from Champaran began arriving on foot and by conveyance to see their champion, that is to see their leader. Now students, this is also an indigo flower for which this great Champaran movement actually happened. Muzaffarpur lawyers called on Gandhi to brief him. They frequently represented peasants groups in court. They told him about their cases and reported the size of their fee. Now Muzaffarpur lawyers called to Gandhi and they told that they took some fees from all these peasants. Now, these poor peasants were harassed more by the lawyers, and they also told Gandhi about their fees to take up the case. Now, students, this is here I end this session today. This is the part 1 of the chapter, and I will continue with the part 2 and part 3 of this chapter soon.